All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I am your host, Cardin Ellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey, everybody.
And they always say that politics makes for strange bedfellows, but the last 2 or 3 days have really taken the cake. We've all seen the tweet mentioning how Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are now, quote, to the right of, that Donald Trump is now to the left of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. But a lot of details are coming down as to how a lot of these establishment people are really reacting to this idea of a universal payout. On this channel, we really like the idea of universality. In fact, we've embraced the concept of universal basic income. And though this stimulus is not universal basic income, it is universal in its nature of payout. And a lot of people seem to really have a problem for it to such a degree that it's strange to see who agrees with who. We're going to analyze some of these details here. Cody, tell us what is going on.
All right, yeah, so I guess one of the first websites we'll go to. It's just, I generally speaking wouldn't use this website because I just view it more as like a blog than a news site. Common Dreams is a progressive aggregation news site. They're about a lot of progressive causes, but closer to a blog. But there's the reason I want to bring it up, though, because it is a lot of commentary on the website, and there's some interesting stuff. So this article is from yesterday, and it's titled, Refusal by Pelosi to Consider Universal Cash Payments in Response to Coronavirus Pandemic Maddening, says progressives. This is a total failure of Democratic Party leadership. That is a quote. I'm not 100% sure who it's attributed to yet. We'll find out in a minute. Anyway, it says progressives are up to it with frustration and anger Wednesday over days of reporting that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi would not consider cash payments for Americans without means testing the ongoing coronavirus outbreak that has ground the U.S. economy to almost a standstill. President Donald Trump and his fellow Republicans have taken the opportunity to outflank Pelosi and House Democrats on the payments, leading to anger from the left. I truly don't know how to describe how maddening it is that Republicans and Trump officials are to the left of congressional Dem leadership on this issue, tweeted activist Jacob Ewell.
I think that's what we saw the other day.
There's several people have put this idea out there. Anyway, this is in response, speaking about how Donald Trump has been open to it. We've seen some Republicans, not all, I'll show you guys in a second, definitely not all Republicans, but still some on the Republican side, seemingly big-name Republicans more so than big-name Democrats, but openly floating around, how do we do this? I mean, I believe Maxine Waters put forth the bill. I think the first person to do it was Tulsi Gabbard. Dude, Tulsi Gabbard can put forth any bill. They're going to shoot it down in 1 minute because they hate her. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality of it. So we saw that. We've seen a lot of people come out with that. However, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are standing in the way. Now, this is one thing that, again, it's from a couple days ago, but this particularly rubbed me the wrong way when I read this. This was Chuck Schumer.
Ooh, I'm with you on this one.
He says, what we're proposing is if you're a small business owner suddenly facing cash flow problems, we would allow you to apply for low-interest loans and other forms of financial assistance that can offer relief quickly. I love how Chuck Schumer's idea is to indebt small business owners to the federal government. Yeah, I love that, dude. I love small business owners whose businesses are forced closed because of the government's response to this, being told that they have the opportunity so you can come hat in hand and beg, but we're taking interest plus some. It's ridiculous that he even put that out.
And the way it's worded is so conniving. I mean, I know that may not be what he intended, and you can't sense tone of voice in a tweet and everything like that. But does that not literally sound like what a mafioso would say? Oh, it's sad to hear that you've had these problems with your business. But don't worry.
Know why?
We'll give you low-interest loans.
Because a mafioso wouldn't tell you could apply. They would just give you the money and ask for interest later. It's ridiculous. Seriously. I'm reading this as Chuck Schumer says, come and beg, and we'll take some off the top when you pay us back.
And that's
insane that he put it. Anyway, I'm not going to get hung up on this. The only reason why I brought it up is because he's the head of the Senate Democrats, and we see the House of the head Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, having some issues with this thing as well. But one of the main reasons why I want to do a video on this today is the Week put out an article. It's really interesting, and I wanted to go through it. And it's called "The Democrats' Destructive Obsession with Means Testing." And this has been something, I said, following universal basic income for a while, and kind of following all the advocacy and movement towards it. The first word, universal, is the most important thing to universal basic income. Yeah. And it's funny. I can tell the political leanings of a person I bring it up to, because they'll respond one of two ways. Universal basic income. There's two knee-jerk reactions. So drug addicts get it? Or so billionaires get it? And it's like, yes, let's forget about the 99.9% of people that fall in the middle of homeless drug addicts and billionaires. Let's forget about every other person and just focus on these extremes that bother you the most. It's ridiculous. People always do that. But anyway, there is this, for whatever reason, this notion to just have a knee-jerk reaction. And we're seeing from the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi, and I think they actually have here we go. So one I read. In technical jargon, Pelosi wants to means test cash aid in response to coronavirus. Don't give the checks to everyone, but target them to the poorest people by at least scaling up the checks for people further down the income ladder, or most likely phasing them out completely for Americans above a certain income threshold. Doesn't sound terrible. Pelosi's Deputy Chief of Staff, Drew Hamill, fleshes point out further in a tweet, the speaker believes we should look at refundable tax credits, expanded unemployment insurance, and direct payments, but must be targeted. So
Yeah, to her friends.
it doesn't sound too awful. However, I want to go through some of the points I make in this article. I say means testing may seem reasonable, but it's actually not a great idea, even in the best of times. And in a crisis situation like the social and economic lockdown necessitated by the coronavirus, direct and universal cash aid is one of the best single policy responses available. The fact that Pelosi had a chance to lead this charge a week ago and demurred, insisting on means testing as a condition, is blinkered and insane on both the politics and the policy merits. I just like that, but we'll get into a second. So here we go. Basically what we're talking about is the downside of means testing is that the testing part takes time and bureaucracy. Information on people's income has to be gathered through the tax code and processed. The government effort needed to simply send checks to every American is not nothing, but it would be, because it'll be quicker and they go through. The biggest thing he mentions is the first thing. Now, here's the problem with means testing in a crisis. I'm a bad example. I'm trying to think of a better example. Let's say somebody was working last year mostly as like the nighttime manager at a popular bar, and they were doing very well, and they pulled home like $98,000 at the end of the year.
Rock on.
Let's say it was a slow January and they got laid off in February or March.
Yeah.
So if you were to just look at the income history of this person, they're making between 70 and 90 grand a year for the last 3 years. Okay, but I also haven't got a real paycheck in 4 months, and I have no job now. So the problem with means testing is, on paper, that's a pretty, I won't say wealthy, but you're making close to 6 figures. If you're like a single person, you're probably doing okay for yourself. The unfortunate reality is, I'm not my tax returns from the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with means testing. Speaking of restaurants, I saw the instance with this. We get into a lot talking about UBI, and I was working in a restaurant. I'm sure a lot of people working in restaurants are familiar with this. Yeah, they are, for whatever reason, these people that claim to want to help you monitor every cent you make and basically ask you to justify it. Why is that money in your account?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Like, I thought you were here to help me feed myself because I don't make that much money. Okay, that's fine, but did your mom give you $50 last week? Did you claim that? Insanity. I've seen people skip shifts to the restaurant. They're like, look, if I work a little bit more, that's just like bad for me because I'll just get less in benefits. Maybe the argument is, well, my point being is, putting people in that position, it no longer feels you're that interested in helping them. I do agree you want to have stopgaps in place so it's not exploited.
Yeah.
But it's harder to do that when people need the money now, not 6 weeks ago. And we can only look at the money you were making, 6-7 weeks ago, and say, well, if we extrapolate that, no, people have gone to zero income functionally. How do you means test someone who was making more money 6 months ago? Now they make none. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And also, income isn't the only other rubric that constantly fails. Because, for example, I noticed this with my company. You know what? My company is very seasonal. We might double our staff in the summertime. Well, for 2 reasons. First off, we got a lot of college students who want work that are coming back home from college, okay? And also, the family business and, pest control is oftentimes influenced by the weather. When it's hotter in Southern California, there's going to be more bugs. But the thing is, all the time, we're wondering when we hire, are we going to, screw up this means-tested county contract that we have with the Small Business Administration, or because we've hired 10 new guys and they have a threshold for the difference between a 25 employee firm and a 15 employee firm. And so measuring by income never does a good job for means testing. Measuring by employees doesn't, because you can have 15 employees that all only work 5 to 10 hours a week.
Well, how about this anecdote right now?
Yeah.
Just an anecdote. I saw someone write this on Twitter and I was saying it's the word of God, but I've heard it sounds believable. Somebody got laid off at a hotel. From a hotel. They applied for unemployment. Unemployment office called the hotel chain. Hotel chain said they're just a 0-hour employee. They have no hours on their schedule, but they're an employee. They're not actually unemployed.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for means testing it.
Yeah.
Thank you for not letting that individual who's not technically, you know what? Maybe they should tell him he's not technically laid off. It shouldn't feel so bad. Don't worry. You just make no money and don't work, but you're not laid off. I mean, the funny games you can start playing around with when you start encroaching the bureaucracy in on it is, I mean, it's what's like the old thing they always say, like, don't really loan money to family members. Give it to them as gifts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If family members you're loaning them money, they might not give it back, and you have to live with that. You have to, if they give it back, great, that's awesome, but don't hold it against them for everyone. They don't. It's really weird that
you come from an Italian family.
Well, no,
that's the Italian.
No, but just you know what I mean. Like if you're giving something up to someone close to you, and they don't just expect you'll get it back unless that's the thing. Just because, one, it's like, well, Like I said, the reason why you're not really helping someone out if you're knocking on their door saying, "Hey, why weren't you at work yesterday to pay me back?" It's like, are you interested in helping me out or getting your money back?
Yeah.
Point being, it sounds like when you do encroach on means testing too much, you get to the point where it feels like they're more interested in being all up in your life than they are in legitimately helping you, and it's a problem that we've seen across the thing. And sorry, in a second, I just want to get back to the week articles. One more really important, neat passage there. They just talk about means testing. Should I go into it now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, sorry.
Well, I was just going to further complain about. Basically, all I was just going to say is that the reason why I knee jerk against means testing so much is like you, I have a moral argument against it, where it's just like, if you're going to do it, just do it for everybody. And sure, there's going to be that 1% you don't like, but the benefit to the 99% is going to be so good.
If you don't want to help me, then just don't. Stop pretending that you do.
It's half the moral argument, but I would be down with means testing. Because what they say on paper sounds great, that, we're going to target the people that need it most. And that actually sounds like a smart, good way to do good governance. But I've never met a means tested program that actually worked out well, that didn't get exploited and do not more harm than good, but not do as much good as a universal program would. Measuring companies by size of employee never works, because seasonal companies get screwed during their season. And you might also, there's plenty of businesses like Magic Mountain, for heaven's sakes, that they get 50,000 employees in any given year. And the average work week for them is probably like 12 hours. Okay. And you can't measure by income, because there might be some businesses like restaurants that have a really high revenue stream, but a thin margin of 10%.
That's the other thing too. Yeah, you have to look at profits, not just money.
Yeah, so there's no rubric out there. There's no means that you can test by that are truly good indicators. Only the holistic view that a business owner has of all of their finances, all of their employees, and all of their situations is really enough to get the idea if somebody needs help. So at the end of the day, the most trustworthy rubric, even though there's liars in this world, is just the idea that we all need help in time of a crisis. So be universal about it, or else don't do it at all.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Going back to my point is, like, if you want to help someone out, sure, give them the loan, but understand that if it's to help them out, it might turn into a gift. And if you're not okay with that, then don't pretend that you cared in the first place. And the week sums it up well. And they say, you might remember how during the Democratic presidential debate primary, Pete Buttigieg and others went after Bernie Sanders for offering free college and student loan forgiveness to everyone rather than targeting it to Americans of lesser means. If you were confused when people dug in so hard in free college debates, even if it seemed like the stakes were so low, it's because this targeted versus universalism really is a giant chasm within the left liberal space, wrote Mike I'm going to get his name wrong. Conskell, another progressive policy activist, and they finished it off nicely. I had hoped this was just a cynic bit of random maneuvering by centrists like Buttigieg and former VP Joe Biden to distinguish themselves from Sanders' left populists, but it seems insisting on the bureaucratic overhang, extra red tape, and mutual social resentments of mean testing has become a mark of technocratic liberal first principles, even at the risk of slowing down and complicating the economic response to what looks to be a massive social crisis, not to mention handing a potentially decisive political win to their opponents. Means testing, it seems, has rotted Democrats' brains. He goes in on them pretty hard in this article. But
so to sum it up, he's literally saying too much red tape slows down the efficacy of a system.
Well, here's the thing.
Sounds familiar to me.
Well, no, here's the thing. You look at some of these things, right? And it's like, the thing I love about universal basic income, and I thought was interesting, Andrew Yang's freedom dividend. A lot of people would attack Andrew Yang's freedom dividend for basically people are saying that it's kind of, it would gut the social safety net or replace existing programs, stuff like that. It's like true. However, a large part of the fundamental logic behind Andrew Yang's freedom dividend was that too much money is wasted in those systems, and we do better off just giving people cash. We wouldn't be replacing them to save money on our end because they don't really need to eat, do they? We'd be replacing them with just a more efficient method of getting them the aid. I mean, the average person doesn't really, adult over 18.
The average, yeah.
Apologize. But still, like, you look at the numbers going through the thing and you realize the amount of people that are taking in more than $1,000 a month personally, individually, through government assistance, it's such a small number that, and again, I always get to this example. It's like, that's why there's a judge and a jury, dude. We can go down the line and make extenuating circumstances for certain people, right? It bothers me to think that it's like, well, but if we do this, it'd be like 15% of people that it wouldn't work great for. It's like, okay, but then we can do something else to help them. Like, it's not like one thing comes down, it can never be changed again. Just because a freedom dividend type of thing would replace some existing social programs doesn't mean it wouldn't lead to the creation of others. And it really bothers me. We're kind of seeing it right now Andrew Yang talks about it big time, and we're seeing it big. Industry shifting. Automation is taking jobs away. It's just going to create other things elsewhere. The problem is there's too many instances of careers being turned into jobs, and the jobs being given to people, and the careers being replaced by the machines because it's just simpler that way.
Yeah.
But anyway, not going too long on this. It does feel a little bit sometimes like we're seeing, and again, it's interesting seeing both Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, the two most powerful Democrats in America, right? I mean, Speaker of the House and the Senate Minority Leader, right? Like they're basically the most influential ones, both coming out and saying, Chuck Schumer's rubbed me the wrong way more than anything. Telling small business owners they can come grovel for money and they have to pay it back plus interest. That was insane to me. I couldn't believe I was reading that.
And I would never take that because the last thing I want to be indebted to is the U.S. government.
Yeah, good luck.
I mean, they'll pass a law like Joe Biden passed that law about student loans saying you can never pay them off. We will come after your estate if you die early to pay off those loans.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, at least a loan shark, once you're 6 feet under, might give up.
Nah,
the government won't, man. They're going to start, they will dig down to see if you got a watch on in your coffin. You know what I'm saying?
But to get back to, as we're wrapping up here, to get back to what I said earlier, this is news from earlier today. I mean, it's bipartisan opposing this stuff, just for different reasons. We're seeing Lindsey Graham also coming out from a closed door lunch, allegedly was telling people that he was trying to get people to oppose Trump's bill. Which, by the way, as just kind of neutral observer on this Lindsey Graham dude is a backstabbing shark that Donald Trump probably should have got rid of a long time ago. Because I feel like every now and then I read a story about how Lindsey Graham is secretly rallying Republicans against Donald Trump. So it's like, as an outside observer of that, I would say get rid of people
like that. But also, who's reporting this?
But,
I mean, are they just putting their spin on it?
I don't know. It could be this. It could be somebody there who didn't appreciate somebody trying to convince him to work against the president, leaking it to the media. Like, this guy can go to. Anyway, like I said, I'm not trying to get too into the partisan stuff, but I'm just looking from the outside looking in. I read these stories a lot that sound like this, and it's funny to me. But we have seen an outcry and a push, and it does seem like. And I guess I wasn't originally going to show this, but I want to show this. And it's just a random tweet I pulled up, but I thought it was funny. It's from somebody who said, my Kiko Sono on Twitter. I said, okay, we're truly in the upside down. I've liked Ann Coulter's tweets. I've retweeted Ben Shapiro, but I never, ever thought I would retweet Diamond and Silk. # people versus Pelosi. And look what she's retweeting, though. Now is not the time for Nancy Pelosi to be playing politics. She can either put the American people first or step the hell down. People versus Pelosi. My point being is that it definitely feels like, ironically enough, as Joe Biden and the candidate of the establishment awful shill class, he won the nominee. I mean, it's basically over. He got the Tulsi Gabbard endorsement, and like everyone's endorsed him except Bernie Sanders, basically at this point, and I think Elizabeth Warren, and I don't think Marianne did. But my point being is we're seeing a lot of people coming around to the idea of why are these people saying they want to help us in government, blocking bills that would help most people, everyone, because it wouldn't. And again, I think it comes down to a lot of times some of these different programs become little mini fiefdoms for these people, and they sit at the top. And guess what? When you rely on the government for health insurance and you rely on the government for food, and they come and tell you, well, you got to cut your hours or we'll take it away from you, you do. And they have control over your lives, and they know it, and they love it. So that's why they realize, but if I just give someone a bag of money, I have no right to show up and knock on their door and demand they explain to me how they spent it. Yeah. No, I want that right. And it's like, no, you don't get that right. If you want to help people, give them money and help them. If you want to control their lives, that's a separate thing. And it's not that, I don't know. Too often I see that get equated under, they use terms like means testing, but really is, we're going to monitor your bank statements and ask you, what the hell is this $500 check from your grandma for your birthday? Yeah. You don't deserve these programs anymore. And that's ridiculous.
I think that human beings, even though we're very complex individuals that have lots of hormones and thoughts and emotions going through our brains at once, we are very simple, okay? And we do make judgments, and simple judgments that turn into binary answers, like, do I like this guy or do I dislike this guy? Do I vote for this person or I don't vote for them? Do I turn left or do I turn right? We make these very complex decisions very quickly, sometimes even without even understanding what's going on subconsciously. And I think what's going to go on subconsciously with a lot of people in their minds is they're going to think, wow, Chuck Schumer, maybe even Lindsey Graham, for sure Nancy Pelosi, they won't give them money that could give immediate relief to fix a program because it doesn't have the bureaucracy attached to it. So what do you love more, me and my family, or the American people? Or the American people or the bureaucracy? There's this very famous instance where FDR, when he died, okay, there was a reporter that went to watch the funeral train. There was this big funeral train that went along, and there was a man who was sitting there who took his hat off and he was crying. And the reporter went up and he said, "Wow, you seem very emotionally impacted by the passing of FDR. Did you know him?" And famously, as the anecdote goes, and as the reporter said, was the man looked up with tears in his eyes. He says, "This person, I didn't know him, but he knew me." Okay. And whether you like them or not, that citizen had felt, because of the hard work throughout the Depression, I'm sure, and the programs that FDR had, and we can argue about whether or not they were successful or slowed down the Depression a different day. But at the end of the day, the emotional impact in that man was, he was like, wow, he cared about me. I think the average American that's staring down the barrel of a big time economic difficulty over the next 2 to 3 months, okay, doesn't give a crap about whether or not the AFL-CIO and the Government Employees Union gets to create another 5,000 person bureaucracy that extends their CalPERS benefits. You know what I'm saying? They're worried about, holy crap, I've got rent coming up at the beginning of the month, which is less than 2 weeks away. How are you going to help me with this thing that nobody saw coming? And if you're stopping it up because of we can't create your bureaucracy fast enough, which do you love more, the bureaucracy or me? And these establishment people are coming out on the side of bureaucracy so badly. I think this will affect their reelection possibilities more than any other social issue that we have seen to date. Any other thing they could have voted on, this one will be so much more of a defining factor in 2020 than people realize. Does that make sense, Cody?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, I guess.
No, I mean, it does. It's a lot there, but no, more or less, yeah. I mean, it's just kind of one of those moments where in a crisis, it's a little bit frustrating to see. Politicians on both sides, by the way. It's just ironic seeing both the most prominent Democrats in the same boat, promoting or putting forth old, tired, dumb ideas that, like I said, man, does it really matter how much I made last year when my business that I worked at will probably never reopen again? Like, it's ridiculous, dude. The restaurant I work at's never reopening, and you're going to hold it against me that I made money last year, and I don't get my benefits now. Like, that is the problem with short-term means testing. It makes no sense, because you have to look at where someone is now, not where they were 6 months ago, and that's not how it ever works. They look at where you were 6 months ago first to see where you were starting, and it's, I don't know, man. It's
and
really
the proof, I think, though, the proof that I think the American people have really shifted this way, and this will be the last thing I say before we end here, is I hate hypocrisy, so I'm oftentimes trying to self-censor or else view what I think through the lens of somebody else's shoes looking in on me. And I think the ultimate proof that we're really, as a people, wanting to go the more universal route, Cody, is the fact that we are also demanding not just a universally distributed benefit from the government, but this huge push towards a flat tax rate. Taxes are universal. I mean, you can't declare that benefits should be universal unless the taxation is universal, right?
Well,
and what is the average person being okay with right now?
Universal, though.
No, they're not. But there's been this huge push towards the VAT, which is a consumption-based tax, which is universally applied to everybody that consumes the good at the exact same rate. So I really give credence to the American people. It's not hypocritical to ask for universal benefit if you have advocated for a universal form of taxation.
Well, I mean, it's not. Not everyone pays taxes. One of the reasons why trying to use like tax seasoning or reverse tax credits don't work. Not everyone pays taxes.
Yeah.
For various reasons. Some people just don't like, some people contribute to their community and society without having a payroll tax or having like income tax and property tax. They just do other things, right? Yeah. And then they don't show up. So it's one of the reasons why full on universal, like the government just going to give you things, is the best way of distributing the things. And I think the problem is that, as I said, when you unconditionally give something to someone, you no longer have any control over them. And the government's not down with that ever.
Yeah.
They will never accept that. And I think that's the problem with unconditionality, unconditional universal, which is, I almost feel like it should be UUBI, because it is unconditional universal UBI. It's there's no conditions attached to it, except for in a perfect world, obviously look at the freedom dividend, and there's not even the conditions. It was just you can opt in or out. Like, I guess, can you call that a condition, an opt in or an out? I guess you technically can. Point being is, the more any roadblocks, anything you start putting in the way, some of the stories I hear, I remember during months ago, some of the debates and arguments about universal basic income and like a federal job guarantee or other means testing. Like the idea of universality versus means testing, as that article I've showed you guys, it's been going on for a while on the left. And the thing that bothers me and drives me crazy is that a lot of people who've never had to use these programs will definitely advocate for them, not realizing, like, dude, every single one of them show up hat in hand and beg and plead and prove you're poor and destitute and all these things, and then you better thank us when we give you your money. Yeah. That's how every single one of these things
And
function.
you will live in fear that we'll take it out away any given week.
Oh my God, yeah. Oh,
you better not get an inheritance from your grandma.
Your life improves for one day. You have one good day, and they're going to come and cut you down at the knees. And that's how these things go every single time. And I don't know, like I said, people who've never had to be inside of them, I can see why they'd advocate for them. As we pointed out earlier, they sound like it makes sense. Well, why not give more money to people who need it more and less money to people who need it less? That makes sense. However, the come over here and beg, and maybe then you'll get some is not the way to do it. And that's functionally all these things turn into every single time. Yeah.
So let us know what you guys think. If you've been part of one of these means-tested programs, you got something to say, please leave a comment below. If you haven't joined the channel yet, please join. It's an inexpensive way to make sure we keep this content coming to you guys without corporate sponsorships. Follow us on PSP Radio 1 on Facebook or on Instagram under Problem Solver Politics. And make sure if you got something to say that you DM us on Twitter. This is Problem Solver Politics. See you guys in the next video.